Hello students. Now today I am starting with the subject engineering mechanics, and let us discuss the first chapter from this subject, that is coplanar forces. But before that, let me discuss what is mechanics is. Mechanics is that branch of science in which we study the forces and their effects on the bodies either at rest or in motion. If we study the forces and their effects on the bodies at rest, the branch is called as statics, whereas if we study the forces and their effects on the bodies in motion, it is called as dynamics. And dynamics is further classified into two parts, kinematics and kinetics. In kinematics, we study the motion of the body without considering the cause of motion, whereas in case of the dynamics, we study the motion of the body along with the forces which are responsible for that motion. Now, so mechanics is all about forces and their effects. So let us see what is this term force is. Now, force can be defined as an external action which results in the acceleration of a body. So if there is an acceleration of the body, it means that there must be a certain force acting on that body. Now, force is a vector quantity. As such, it requires both magnitude and direction for its representation. The SI unit of force is Newton. The higher units which are used are kilonewton, meganewton, giganewton. Kilonewton is 10 raised to 3 Newton, meganewton is 10 raised to 6 Newton, and giganewton is 10 raised to 9 Newton. So, force is a vector quantity and its SI unit is Newton. A force of 1 Newton is that force which produces an acceleration of 1 meter per second square to a body of mass 1 kg. So, that is the definition of force of 1 Newton. But again, the given body, the given object or the given particle, it may be subjected to a single or number of forces. When there are number of forces acting on a body, it is said that the body is subjected to system of forces. Now, there can be different types of systems of forces, and I have classified these different types of system of forces into three types. First is the collinear forces, second is the coplanar forces, and third one is the non-coplanar forces. Now, the first type, that is collinear forces, as the name suggests, all the forces act along the same line. So, here I have shown the forces. The first force is acting towards right, second one is acting towards left, the third one is acting towards right. But what is important is that all the forces are along the same line, so it is called as a collinear force system. Second type is coplanar force system. Now, in case of coplanar forces, all the forces in a system act in one and the same plane. So, here I am dividing coplanar force system into three types: concurrent, non-concurrent and parallel. Means concurrent coplanar forces, non-concurrent coplanar forces and parallel coplanar forces. Similarly, I am classifying the third type, that is non-coplanar forces, into three types: concurrent non-coplanar forces, non-concurrent non-coplanar forces and parallel non-coplanar forces. Now, let us see the examples of these. Now, I am going for this one, concurrent coplanar forces. Concurrent coplanar forces, imagine that a small ring is tied by means of number of ropes. So, it is the small ring which is tied by means of number of ropes, and these ropes are pulled in different directions. So, all these forces or all these actions which are applied on the ropes will be consisting of forces and which are going to pass through the center of this ring. So, it forms a concurrent coplanar forces. Number of ropes tied to a small ring and the ropes are pulled in different directions. It is a concurrent coplanar force system. Second, non-concurrent coplanar forces. Now, the example of it is a ladder resting against a wall. So, ladder leaning against a vertical wall and resting on a horizontal floor is shown over here. There can be the reactions provided by the wall and the horizontal floor and the frictional force which I have shown over there, along with the weight of the ladder and the weights of the persons which are acting on the ladder. All these forces form a non-concurrent coplanar force system. Now, the third one is parallel coplanar forces. Now, the example of which is a simply supported beam. which is subjected to vertical loading, it is a case of parallel coplanar forces, or you can consider a truss on which number of forces are acting at the joints and the reactions at the supports which are vertical. So it is an example of parallel coplanar forces. Now then, concurrent non-coplanar force system. Consider a dumpy level placed on a tripod stand. So the weight of the dumpy level will be acting in downward direction like this, whereas the legs of this tripod will provide the reactions. So all these forces are going to pass through a same point, but the forces are not in one plane, they are in different planes. So it forms a concurrent non-coplanar force system. Then non-concurrent non-coplanar forces. Consider a triangular prism. So it is a triangular prism in which the two bases are having a shape of triangle and all are connected by means of vertical lines. So if the forces are acting along all the edges of this triangular prism, it forms a non-concurrent non-coplanar force system. The last one, parallel non-coplanar forces. Now I am considering a table which has got 4 legs. The weight of the table is going to act through the CG of this table in downward direction, whereas the reactions will be provided by means of the legs. So all these forces are parallel to one another, but these forces are not in the same plane. So it forms a parallel non-coplanar force system. So this is how there are different types of forces and which can be classified like this. Now next term which I am going to define is the component of a force. Now in order to define the component of a force, what I am going to do is, see, the component of a force can be defined as the effect of the force along the given direction. Now in order to explain it, what I am doing is that, suppose it is the x-axis and this vertical line is the y-axis, and let there is a certain particle which is at origin O at certain instant, and let it move from O to A, and in this let it cover a distance equal to 5 meter. Now if this angle is theta, the displacement is 5 meter and it is at an angle theta. Now this displacement can be defined in words like this. The displacement is 5 meters, it is in the first quadrant and it is at an angle theta with x-axis. But being an engineering student, being a science student, I am not going to define the displacement like this. What I will do is that I will just complete this triangle. I will measure this horizontal distance, say it is 4 meter. I will measure this vertical distance, say it is 3 meter. And instead of saying that the displacement is 5 meters in the first quadrant at an angle theta with positive x direction, I will simply represent this displacement as it is 4 meter along x axis and 3 meters along y axis. So which completely defines the displacement which is actually in inclined direction. So this is how we are in a habit of working with x and y axis. Now 5 meter, which is the actual displacement, has its effect along x axis, which is called as x effect of that displacement or x component of that displacement. Similarly 3 meter is the effect of that displacement along y direction, which is called as y effect of the displacement. Now every vector quantity, whether it is a displacement, an acceleration or a force, has its effect along all the reference directions. The effect of a force along the x axis is called as x component of the force, and the effect of the force along y direction is called as y component of a force. Now always again, while dealing with the problems, we always consider x and y axis, and that is why it is important to get the components of a given force. The next question is, how many components the given force can have? Now the answer is, the given force can have an infinite number of components, because see, if I ask you to define the x-axis, how will you define the x-axis? Will you be defining the x-axis like this? X-axis is the horizontal line. If you define it like this, x-axis is the horizontal line, my next question is define the horizontal line. So what is horizontal line? Because you will be in confusion. Now we know that earth is a sphere. Earth is a sphere. And if you are standing over here at the North Pole, as per you, the x-axis will be this line. But if you change your position and if you appear on the equator over here, your x-axis will be like this. If you are at this position, your x-axis will be like this. So depending on your position, you can draw x-axis in infinite number of ways. Similarly, the y-axis can also be drawn in infinite number of ways. As per our convenience, we consider one set of such axes. Generally, we consider x-axis along one dimension of the notebook, whereas y-axis is considered along the other dimension of the notebook. So what we do is that we draw a line like this, we name it as x-axis, and we draw the line like this, which is y-axis. But there can be infinite number of ways in which the x and y-axis can be considered. So if there are infinite number of x-axis, if there are infinite number of y-axis, the given force can be resolved, or it can have infinite number of components. So remember it well, the given force can have infinite number of components. But always we will be dealing with the x component and y component, where x component is considered parallel to one of the dimensions of your, say here along the one dimension of the whiteboard, and y axis is along the other dimension of the whiteboard. So this is fx, and the component along y axis is fy. If theta is the angle given, if angle is given with x axis, then x component becomes f cos theta if f is the given force. If f is the given force, angle is known with x axis, x component is f cos theta. If f is the given force, angle is known with the y axis, y component is f cos theta. So remember it well, if the angle is given with x axis, the component is f cos theta. If the angle is given with y axis, the component is or y component is f cos theta. Or the direction with which the angle is given, the component along that direction is always f cos theta, and the component along the other direction, means perpendicular direction, will be f sin theta. So this is how you can get the components of a given force. Now once you know how to get the components of a given force, the next task is to know about the resultant force. Now resultant force is a single force which can replace the given system of forces with the same effect. That is the basic definition of resultant force. But again, here you should know how to get the resultant of a given force system. Now we have seen that force is a vector quantity, and that is why resultant force is also a vector quantity. And whenever it is asked to get the resultant of the given force system, it means that you will have to get the magnitude of the resultant force as well as the direction of the resultant force also. Now here I am going to discuss the resultant of three different types of force systems: resultant of two forces, resultant of concurrent forces, and resultant of non-concurrent forces. Now you have been studying the resultant of two forces right from the 11th standard. If P and Q are the two forces, then their resultant can be given as R is equal to root of P square plus Q square plus 2PQ cos of theta, where theta is the angle between the two forces P and Q. Now this formula gives you the magnitude of the resultant force, whereas the direction of the resultant force means it's or the angle made by the resultant force with one of the forces. Usually we prefer the angle made by the resultant force with the first force P, and if it is alpha, tan alpha is equal to Q sin theta divided by P plus Q cos of theta. So these formulae are very well known to you. So this is how you can get the resultant of two forces. Now let us see how to get the resultant of concurrent forces. Now just remember, whenever it is asked to get the resultant of any given force system, it simply means that you are asked to replace the given force system by means of a single force. or you are asked to reduce the given system of forces into a single force. Now here if a number of forces are acting at a point, it is called as a concurrent force system. So I have shown number of forces acting at this point. Now my target is to reduce the given system of forces into a single force. Now I am going to do, or I am going to achieve it in two steps. In the first step, what I will do is that I will just reduce the given system of forces into two forces first. Now using the fact that, see, there are number of forces acting in this case, but it is quite clear that each and every force is going to have its X effect. So this first force will have its X effect, second force will have its X effect, third force will also have its X effect. And if I add them together, if I add all the X effects of all the forces in a system, then I get summation effects, which is the final X effect of the system of forces. So summation effects is nothing but the addition of X effects, X components of all the forces in the given force system. Similarly, I can get summation Fy, which is nothing but the sum of Y components of all the forces in the given force system. So if I get summation Fx, if I get summation Fy, it simply means that I have reduced the given system of forces into two forces. So the problem gets simplified. Here the number of forces were acting. Now here I have reduced the system into two forces. And once I reduce the system into two forces, I know what is to be done to get the resultant of these two forces, because it is that case in which two forces are acting. I know the formulae to get the resultant force. So here two forces are summation Fx and summation Fy. Let summation Fx is equal to P, let summation Fy is equal to Q, and the angle between these two is theta, which is actually 90 degrees. And if I substitute these values over there, see, cos of 90, because theta is 90 over here, cos 90 is 0, this term disappears, and the final formula for R will be R is equal to root of summation Fx square plus summation Fy square. And the angle made by the resultant with the x axis can be obtained as tan of theta is equal to modulus of summation Fy upon summation Fx. Remember it well, theta is the angle made by the resultant with x axis in the respective quadrant. If I use the modulus sign, I get the angle made by the resultant with the x axis in the respective quadrant. So this is how the resultant in concurrent force system can be obtained. In order to get the resultant in non-concurrent forces, again the difference between the resultant of non-concurrent forces and resultant of concurrent forces is like this. See, in this case all the forces are acting at a single point, say point O. Now if it is asked to get the resultant, what I am going to do is that I am going to replace the given system of forces by means of a single force. So if all the forces in a system are acting at a point O, then it simply means that resultant of the given force system should also act at the point O. But it is not the case over here. If there are number of forces acting in a system, in case of non-concurrent forces, say there are number of forces acting at A, B, C and D, and if I reduce the system of forces into a single force, the question I will be facing is that at which position or at which point the resultant is going to act, which was not there in case of concurrent forces. So this question was not there in case of concurrent forces, but here the question of location of the resultant force, the question of point of application of the resultant force will always be there. And that is why in case of non-concurrent forces, along with the magnitude of the resultant force, along with the direction of the resultant force, we will have to get the location of the resultant force also. And in order to locate the resultant force, we will have to use Varigno's theorem. Varigno's theorem states that algebraic sum of moments of all the forces in the given force system about any point is equal to moment of the resultant force about the same point. Now means Varignon's theorem takes into account the rotational effect of the system of forces. Now in the first two cases, the rotational effect was not the question, because in the first case, that is two forces are acting at a point, in the second case all the forces are acting at a point, and a point can never be put into rotation. Whereas here the rotational effect may be there, and we will have to check the rotational effect in the third case. And rotational effect of the given system of forces must be equal to the rotational effect of the resultant force about the same point. And while doing this, we will have to come across the term which is called as moment. Moment is nothing but the turning or twisting or rotational effect produced by a force, and it is given by the product of the given force and the perpendicular distance from the reference point. Moment can be of two types. First, clockwise moment, whereas second is the anti-clockwise moment. Generally, we consider clockwise moment as positive and anti-clockwise moment as negative. So here, while using or while getting the location of the resultant force, we will have to apply Varigno's theorem. So algebraic sum of moments of all the forces about any point must be equal to moment of the resultant force about the same point. This is how we can get the resultant analytically. There is another method of getting the resultant also, which is called as graphical method, in which we use three theorems: parallelogram theorem or parallelogram law of forces, second is triangle law of forces, and third one is polygon law of forces. Now in case of parallelogram law of forces, it states that if two forces acting at a point can be represented in magnitude and direction by the two adjacent sides of a parallelogram, the resultant may be represented in magnitude and direction by the diagonal which is passing through the point of intersection of the two sides or two forces. So which is parallelogram law of forces. It can be used to get the resultant of two forces. Whereas second law, that is triangle law of forces, it states that if two forces acting at a point can be represented in magnitude and direction by the two adjacent sides of a triangle taken in order, then the resultant may be represented by the third side taken in opposite order. It can this law, that is triangle law of forces, can also be used to get the resultant of two forces. There is one more law which is called as polygon law of forces. Polygon law of forces can be used to get the resultant of number of concurrent forces, and it states that if the number of forces acting at a point can be represented in magnitude and direction by the adjacent sides of a polygon taken in order, then the resultant may be represented in magnitude and direction in opposite order by the of the closing side. So that is the polygon law of forces. So using this knowledge, you can always get the resultant of the given force system. Thanks.